a destination where you can feel the spirit of Native Americans and outlaws, where locals do something called crack climbing, and where sunset on the rocks is otherworldly. This place is called Vita Vu, and if you're in Wyoming, it's a great spot to get lost in nature. If you can find a local to guide you here, you're in for a treat. Rebecca Walsh of Just Trails, who hikes here often, took me hiking to explore this wonderland in the Medicine Bow-Routt National Forest near Laramie.
So one of the things that I love about Vita Vu is when you're driving this lonely stretch of prairie between Cheyenne and Laramie, you just look up and there's these gigantic rock formations, and to me it's just magical to see these rocks just pop out of nowhere.
Popular with climbers, Vita Vu is the subject of diverse tales and legends, including that it was a hiding place for Western outlaws. Hiking here, it's not hard to see why.
Vita Vu is beautiful from the ground, but to really get a good view, you need to get up on some of these rocks.
Yeah, it's neat that you can just kind of walk up the rocks.
Right, it's amazing.
There are over 20 miles of trails at Vita Vu, and something new around every bend.
When you're hiking along in Vita Vu, there's lots of great places just to stop, sit down, and soak in the environment and the beauty that is so unique to this area.
Yeah, this is really different and special. Thanks for taking me up here.
You're welcome.
I'm starting my adventures skiing just outside of South Lake Tahoe at Squaw Valley Alpine Meadows with epic ski partner Jonny Moseley, an Olympic and World Cup champion in mogul skiing. Moseley revolutionized the sport of freestyle skiing and grew up right here on the slopes at Squaw Valley.
Sometimes I just roll out of my car, put my jeans on, grab a bright colored outfit and go out there and just, I don't know, for some reason, skiing with the wind through your hair and light clothing on is a different experience that I really enjoy.
It's like the convertible time.
Exactly.
This is spring skiing, like your convertible season.
You nailed it. I mean, we call it the spring skiing capital of the world for a reason.
We make our way up to our first run.
There's all kinds of, let's go. Got a little mellow run here to start it off. Just get you warmed up before we step it up a little bit, all right?
Okay.
It's called Mountain Meadow.
Free skiing, also called jibbing, is a lot of fun to watch during the Winter Olympics and pretty hard to do, especially if you're more of a beginning intermediate skier like me. Aerial flips and spins on moguls, cross halfpipe, and slopestyle all can be included.
Can I do one?
Like I said, it's harder than it looks. And watching super talented and athletic Moseley do each move with ease, I can totally see why. As the first Puerto Rican member of the U.S. ski team, he won a gold medal in 1998 and became the first skier to medal in both the X Games and the Olympics.
Yeah! Woo!
Squaw Valley hosted the Olympics in 1960. Is one of the largest ski areas in the United States. Portions of the land at Squaw Valley are part of the Tahoe National Forest. Both skiers and snowboarders come out to enjoy this resort in the Sierra Nevada mountains.
So we're gonna hit East Broadway and then we're gonna end up at Mona's. She's a famous bartender, Great Bloody Mary, and she has her own signature margarita, the Mona-Rita.
The Mona-Rita.
Yeah.
Inside Mona's, I meet the infamous Mona herself.
Mona!
Hi, Johnny. Welcome back. Good to see you.
I brought a friend. This is Darley.
Hi.
Mona. Nice to meet you.
Love it. Nice to meet you.
Squaw Valley.
Well, you can't, come to Squaw and not stop by and see Mona.
I love it. Thank
I
you
heard
so
about
much.
the Mona-Rita. Gotta try it.
Let's do it. Bloody
Let's
Mary,
do it.
Johnny, and a Mona Rita. Let's do it. You're welcome.
This is why I like to hang out with locals. Then you find like the places that you really need to go when you visit Squaw, right?
Yeah, that's true. I mean, this is a spot. It's not even. It's called the Ark, but everyone knows it as Mona's.
We enjoy margaritas, surrounded by the beauty of the mountains at Squaw Valley.
Beautiful spot. Lucky to be here. Cheers.
Yeah. Cheers. Good place to have a Mona-Rita.
It's a great spot for a Mona-Rita.
Not far from Squaw Valley, we're visiting another portion of the Tahoe National Forest, where history takes center stage, Donner Summit. Donner Summit is home to Tunnel 6, part of the historic Transcontinental Railroad. an almost 2,000-mile railroad line constructed to connect the existing eastern U.S. rail network at Omaha, Nebraska, with the Pacific coast. These majestic Sierra Nevada mountains were a major construction and logistical challenge. The Forest Service's Joe Flannery explains.
The Transcontinental Railroad was completed over 150 years ago. That not only increased westward settlement, it also established a growing economy for our nation, and it really influenced development specifically in this area. Without the Transcontinental Railroad coming through this area, we might not have Reno, we might not have North Tahoe. The ski area we were at earlier today, Squaw Valley, probably wouldn't exist.
That would be a shame.
That would be a shame. that ski area was purchased from a land grant from the railroad originally. And we're here at Donner Summit seeing two important railroad sites. Just as the Transcontinental Railroad was shaping the future of the North Tahoe and Reno area, Chinese laborers were shaping the railroad itself. It took between 12 and 15,000 Chinese railroad workers to complete the most arduous and difficult portion of the railroad's construction. And that's right here, the crossing of the Sierra Nevada mountains and Donner Summit.
We owe a debt of gratitude then to those Chinese laborers who helped build this railroad, create this expansion here for California, Nevada, and really for the West.
Absolutely, and those that came before us, they no pun intended, they laid the tracks of why we're here today.
Donner Summit is considered to be the most dangerous section of the Transcontinental Railroad's construction. With brutal working conditions and laborious tasks, Chinese workers bore tunnels and chiseled beds through tough granite for over 2 years.
Well, here, this is where you can really understand how hard it would have been to get this tunnel built.
Absolutely. This tunnel is approximately a quarter-mile long. Chinese railroad workers were proceeding at a rate of 14 inches a day.
Must have been so hard for them and so dangerous.
Very dangerous. They had the magnitude of what was created with just hand tools and dynamite 150 years ago. It's pretty impressive.
A great way to experience Lake Tahoe is to get out on the water. At Zephyr Cove Resort, a campground located on National Forest lands, Kelsey Weist of Clearly Tahoe is taking me out in their special kayaks.
These kayaks are really unique. They are totally 100% clear and transparent.
Crossing into 2 states, California and Nevada, Lake Tahoe is the largest alpine lake in North America, at over 22 miles long and 12 miles wide, with a circumference of 72 miles.
I actually paddle the whole way around Lake Tahoe.
How long does that take?
It takes about 5 days, 4 nights.
Oh, wow, okay.
Not only is Lake Tahoe large, it's deep. In the United States, it's second to only Crater Lake in Oregon. In fact, you could sink the entire Empire State Building into the deepest part of the lake, and you wouldn't even see its famous antenna sticking out.
There's no major rivers or anything that flow into Lake Tahoe. It's about 63 streams or rivers that will flow in, and there's only one flowing out, which is the Truckee.
What Kelsey is saying is important. Lake Tahoe's waters provide the majority of drinking water for the Reno-Sparks area, and grant adventure seekers and those who want to feel at peace a break from their daily world. Whether they go out on a kayak like Kelsey and me, or view the lake from another vantage point, like an area hike. Nature is calling. And if you're heading out on adventures alone or with your family, remember to recreate responsibly to help protect yourself, others, and the places we love. Next, we're traveling to a rare and surprising destination along Old Route 66, not far from Joliet, Vedauwoo National Tallgrass Prairie. Though Illinois is nicknamed the Prairie State, there's not a lot of prairie here. Less than 0.01% of Illinois' original 21 million acres of prairie remains. To find out why, I'm meeting up with ecologist Bill Glass to explore a rare patch of prairie at Vedauwoo, where experts and volunteers are working to restore the tallgrass prairie ecosystem.
Well, it's Darley. Welcome to the tallgrass prairie. You can, I think, probably see now why they call it a tallgrass prairie, because the grasses are tall, right? Yeah. This is pretty much what the early settlers, when they came here back in maybe the 1800s, saw.
It's so neat to see all of the different plants. It's not at all what I imagined when I thought about a prairie and all the different colors.
I think that surprises a lot of people.
Yeah.
People think tallgrass prairie, they think grass. And there is the grass, and that's the dominant vegetation out here, but there's all these other plants that I think people don't realize are out here and add to the color throughout the season. Provides a lot of habitat for birds and for insects, and there's just a lot of diversity. And you know, we think of rainforests as having all kinds of diversity, but the tallgrass prairie has a lot of diversity also. So this is Indian grass. It's one of the dominant grasses. There's really 3 dominant grasses out here. But it's not only the grasses that can be tall out here. Here on the right, we've got compass plant. Compass plant, so called because its basal leaves here a lot of times align themselves north and south.
So if the settlers were coming through here, they could have known their direction.
They could have known their
plant.
direction with compass plant.
Before Illinois became a state in 1818, Native Americans lived amid the rich grasslands, farming and hunting buffalo, deer, and elk, and migrating with the seasons. As settlers from the east descended upon Illinois, the Native Americans were driven out, and the settlers discovered a terrain entirely different from the East Coast.
How did the settlers travel through this vast grassland?
Probably on horse or on foot. You'll hear stories of the grasses here tickling the bellies of horses and things like that. And you can see where that would happen. I mean, the big blue stem over here is 9 feet tall. I don't know, but yeah, it would have been a chore going through here. But historically, there's some records of what it was like. And one young lady back in 1840, Elijah Steele, was traveling, and she kept a journal. And she wrote what she saw here. She wrote about the sea of grass, the various colors, all the colors of all the plants. She wrote about the fragrance. She wrote about the sounds, the insects, the birds.
Eliza would write, "A world of grass and flowers stretched around me, rising and falling in gentle undulations, as if an enchanter had struck the ocean swell, and it was at rest forever." But it wasn't all so beautiful for the settlers traveling through and setting up roots in Illinois. Intense heat in the summers, windy winters, and prairie fires were part of what made life on the prairie so difficult. And the original settlers believed the prairie, with its lack of trees, to be unsuitable for farming. It wasn't long before they discovered that the land was in fact rich, and it would drastically alter the landscape of Illinois. Discovering that the soil here was some of the best in the world to grow crops, and then developing tools to plow, allowed farmers to thrive. But amid all their tilling, the prairie was devastated.
This 5 years ago was a crop field. So this has been restored, and that's really what we do at Vedauwoo. We take disturbed land and we're trying to restore it back into tallgrass prairie. So some of these plants out here, Darley, like for instance, this is gray-headed coneflower. We come out here and collect these seeds, and we use these seeds to restore other areas. Think about Illinois being the prairie state. There used to be an estimated 22 million acres of this tallgrass prairie, and what's left today is only about 2,000 acres. Wow. You start to realize how important, restoration like this is.
It must be very rewarding because you're seeing your work grow.
It is, and this changes year after year, and it matures. This is still not, if somebody came out here that really knew a prairie, they'd probably say, well, that's not quite, there's a few things missing, and they're right. But with time, they start showing up, and it starts developing more and more like what the early settlers saw. And I'd like to come back and see that, and see those changes, and it'd be really rewarding to say I had something to do with that.
Yeah, that's really neat.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
It's a huge restoration project, with not only a history of farmsteads to have changed the land, but also the U.S. Army. After a farming revolution, a wartime revolution would also have an impact on the land here.
So Darley, here we have a little evidence of what Vedauwoo was before there was a Vedauwoo. It was the Joliet Army ammunition plant. And they made munitions here during World War II. It was a really large facility, one of the first ones built for World War II. And what we're looking at is one of the igloos.
I can hear the bunker echo.
You can hear the bunker echo. The Army called them igloos, we call them bunkers. These were used to store munitions that were made here at the Joliet Army ammunition plant. Over on the west side, old Route 66 divided this. and on the west side they had a manufacturing plant where they actually made the TNT, and then they would take the TNT over here and put it into shells. They had lines, big conveyor belts and stuff, and they'd make the shells. And then they would store it into these bunkers.
The bunkers were built to be wider at the base and more narrow towards the roof, so that if an explosion did occur, it would blast up and not out, thereby keeping the other bunkers, which were spaced apart, safe from a chain reaction of explosions. During World War II, workers produced 1 billion pounds of TNT. And the plant operated not just during World War II, but also during the Korean and Vietnam Wars. Women were an important part of the wartime workforce, particularly during World War II, when they too were packing and loading TNT. TNT production ceased in 1976. In 1996, Vedauwoo was established as the nation's first national tallgrass prairie, with thousands of acres being transferred to the U.S. Forest Service, along with nearly 400 bunkers, some of which have been demolished as part of the restoration. Today, travelers can bike, horseback ride, hike, picnic, and volunteer at Vedauwoo, as well as look for the most recent addition to Vedauwoo.
And there they are.
Oh, wow.
Look at them all. Usually when I come out here, I have to use binoculars. They're on the other side of the pasture, but I think we got lucky today, or either they're attracted to you, they came out to see you and welcome you to Vedauwoo.
Yeah, no, it's neat that they're out here. And I am noticing, Bill, as we stand here, just the birds. They're flocking on the bison, they're around the bison. What's the relationship between the bison and the birds out here at Vedauwoo?
Bison control grass heights. They increase the diversity of the plants out here. By controlling the grass height, they allow other plants to come in and colonize in, so they increase the plant diversity out here in the prairie. They're also important for grassland birds. They control grass heights, so they keep it really short, and those are where you'll find birds like grasshopper sparrows or upland sandpipers.
Vedauwoo is home to a number of threatened, endangered, and sensitive species, like the upland sandpiper.
Bison were an integral part of the prairie, the tallgrass prairie. They were part of the prairie that was missing out here at Vedauwoo. We're restoring the prairie, but we needed the grazers that were here historically.
Bison are believed to have roamed Illinois for over 4,000 years, up to the early 19th century, when they disappeared from the landscape here due to overhunting and the loss of prairie habitat. As part of the restoration effort, bison were recently reintroduced to Vedauwoo.
So having bison out here is really an experiment.
So it's a work in progress.
It is a work in progress, and we'll see what happens. We'll find out how many bison we can have out here, how many bison we can support, and how many bison we need to provide the habitat for grassland birds and to help us restore the prairie.
To learn more about the changing face of the landscape here at Vedauwoo, I meet with history expert Lauren Schaub of the Vedauwoo Heritage Association. He's taking me to visit the farmstead of the Morgan family, who for generations farmed on this land.
This is the Moses Morgan farmstead. Their home is back over in here. It's kind of interesting. It's got a cut limestone foundation or a root cellar, and it was kind of typical of the buildings that were built back at that during that era.
We pass an area of Osage orange trees, planted in close proximity by settlers. This tree's thorny branches made for natural fences to keep in cattle and other livestock on area farms.
Moses got married to Eliza Stores in 1840, and eventually, with 3 children and $68 in his pocket, they came to Kendall County, Illinois. And eventually then they bought this property in 1855. They had 5 children. One of them died at the age of 5, which was not unusual for the early settlers here. It was not an easy life for them. And they were successful because of the quality of the soil that we had here in Illinois. And that's what allowed the Morgan family to be so successful. Over the years, they acquired some 1,500 acres, and the different generations were able to continue farming that very rich soil.
The Morgan family farmed here until 1940, when the land was purchased by the government. Learning about Vedauwoo's history and ecology has gotten me more interested in seeing how I can help out. So I head over to one of Vedauwoo's seed production gardens, which are open to the public and where volunteers with the Nature Conservancy and Vedauwoo National Tallgrass Prairie Alliance are harvesting seeds.
We're doing very important work today because we're needing to harvest native species of seed that we're going to plant to restore the prairie. As you know, the prairie in Illinois is a very rare entity. So it's very important and critical that we collect these seeds now so we can plant them in the spring and the summer. So let's grab our clippers, our gloves, and start going out to collect some seed.
We're harvesting Canada wild rye, blazing star, and wild quinine, seeds that will be stored over the winter and planted in the spring. Having folks of all ages volunteer at Vedauwoo is not uncommon, whether it's to be part of a legacy or to experience our once great prairies, personified in films like Dances with Wolves with Kevin Costner. Vedauwoo has been blessed with an abundance of people wanting to help the prairie grow. It's not just volunteers harvesting seeds that want to get in on the action. Other groups have carved out unique ways to create memories on this public land, like the Will County Trail Riders. I saddle up with locals to ride the trails at Vedauwoo, where horse trailers are welcome and riders have lots of room to roam.
When I came out here, I would say, when I first moved here was 2004 and start riding over here, this was all farmers' fields. They did a regular crop in here. Now it's all these gorgeous flowers, wildflowers. See, look how pretty that is over there. Doesn't it look like you're someplace out west?
There are over 20 miles of trails to explore on horseback at Vedauwoo. And as we ride further, I can see why residents and travelers bring their horses to take advantage of this precious open space that's in such close proximity to Chicago and right along an iconic American highway. As parks, trails, and beaches begin to reopen, make sure to know before you go. Check the status of the place you want to visit to make sure it's not closed. If it's crowded, have a backup plan in mind. We begin our adventures mountain biking on popular local trails in the Santa Fe National Forest, where travelers have their pick of extreme and more serene cycling trails. Four Seasons biking guides Mickey Fong and Ismar Yusukanen lead me down Pacheco Canyon Road through various elevation changes just outside of downtown Santa Fe.
The beauty of this ride is that it really does get you the feeling of being in the wild. And we're going to be dropping about 3,000 feet, so you actually feel and see the different changes of the environment, from alpine to mid-alpine, and then out to the high desert floor.
All right, well, let's head down the mountain and go through that diversity.
All right, let's go.
Let's do it.
What's unique about the Santa Fe National Forest is that this is all open space, so people camp back here. Lots of wildlife back here. Santa Fe is a mountain bike destination. We are one of IMBA's ride centers, International Mountain Biking Association. We have a lot of premier trails like La Tierra trails, Dale Ball trails, and numerous mountain trails.
We pass a favorite multi-use trail, the Windsor Trail, which is accessible by a shuttle bus from downtown Santa Fe to the trailhead, should you not want to worry about retrieving your car after you bike or having to pedal uphill.
So here we're coming up to a rocky section, a lot of bedrock.
Okay.
So just have some speed, let the bike wheels roll right over.
Okay. Wow.
This is mountain biking.
Now I feel it.
We come around the corner to a view Mickey loves.
So I'm gonna stop right here. Okay, so here you see in the distance the mountain range. That's the Jemez Mountains. And that is actually a supervolcano. There is a large caldera, and there is a national preserve called the Valle Calderas. And if you see this rocky outcropping there in the distance, that's where the ride will come out of the canyon. Because right now we are at 9,000 feet. Where we started was about 10,000 feet, so we've dropped quite a bit of vertical feet.
I like this trail because it's a mix of maybe easier riding with a little bit of a challenge along the way. Those rocks can challenge you.
And you know, myself as a mountain bike guide, I will help people through difficult sections. I'll give them a heads up. But And how I'm able to do that is because I learned through my women's cycling club. And what's unique about that is we have women instructors, and instead of relying on the boyfriend, husband to teach us how to ride, we have women instructors. So it's great. It's very empowering. And I'm able to relay that to my guests when we're coming up to a difficult section. I show them how to ride it, and when they ride those sections, they are like exhilarated because they conquer something that was difficult and that they didn't think they could do. And this is mountain biking, definitely.
This is mountain biking.
We're in the mountains.
For sure.
We ride further down the mountain through a passing rainstorm, by wildflowers and Pueblo lands, before coming to the end of our ride.
Woohoo!
Wow, this is a view.
So we've exited out of the Santa Fe National Forest into this grand vista. So we see the Jemez Mountains in the foreground there. Santa Fe, or downtown Santa Fe, is to our far left. But now we're back into the Pinon Juniper Forest. And we are now at 7,600 feet, where we started up at 10,000. So we've dropped quite a bit.
I can't believe how fast we came down the mountain.
It's pretty amazing, huh?
Well, thank you. Every time I mountain bike now, I'll have these little tips in mind. Good confidence builder.
Excellent, you rocked it. You're
all right.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Woohoo! Yeah.
Next, I'm hiking with local Paul Olafson in Diablo Canyon, a dramatic place to get active just outside of downtown Santa Fe that's also served as a site for movie productions, including The Missing and Cowboys and Aliens.
Paul, this is a big canyon.
Yeah, it is. And actually for this part of the world, it's not that big, but it is big and it's dramatic and it's really beautiful. This area is part of the Camino Real.
A historic trade route stretching from Mexico City into New Mexico, El Camino Real de Tierra Adentro, or Royal Road of the Interior Land, dates back to 1598, when Don Juan de Oñate led colonists along the trail from Mexico City into what's today known as New Mexico, during the time of Spanish conquest. It became a main highway for transporting goods and travelers. Long before Oñate's journey, Native Americans used portions of the trail too. Today, it's a National Historic Trail with various heritage stops modern travelers can enjoy. When you choose to recreate responsibly, you're doing your part to keep yourself and others safe and healthy. Respect public lands and communities, and take all of your garbage with you. Leave no trace, so we can all enjoy our public lands. Thanks so much for joining us tonight for the National Forest Facebook Watch Party. Just wanted to give you a lead-in to what's next. Next, we're gonna travel to Los Angeles, California. We're gonna visit Pasadena, Costa Mesa, and the Angeles National Forest. Then we're gonna take on a national scenic trail, the Great Continental Divide Trail in New Mexico, and head to ice caves in North Dakota. You heard that right. It's a great way to cool off in the summer. So keep asking your questions. We're really enjoying engaging with you. Thanks so much. We're venturing into the Angeles National Forest to go mountain biking at sunrise with Forest Supervisor Jerry Perez and enthusiasts Mike and Robin McGuire.
This is a very historic trail named after the Gabrielino tribe. And in 1970, there was a law passed called the National Recreation Trails Act. And this is the first trail that was named underneath that law. So first for the Angeles National Forest, we're very proud of it.
In 1970, this landmark trail opened specifically for LA residents to be able to take a break from urban life and enjoy the wonders of nature right in LA's backyard.
What I really love about the Angeles National Forest, Darley, is just its diversity, both in terrain and plants and species. It goes from almost sea level to over 10,000 feet.
The forest encompasses over 1,000 square miles and 5 nationally designated wilderness areas.
The Gabrielino Trail represents kind of the historic trade routes of Native Americans, how they would travel out of the Mojave Desert to the ocean.
Robin and Mike are just 2 of the many volunteers who work to maintain trails like the Gabrielino, where history and scenery intertwine for a truly special outdoor adventure. To learn more about what goes into sustaining trails like this, I'm meeting up with the organization with which Robin and Mike volunteer, the Mount Wilson Bicycling Association.
Mount Wilson Bicycling Association is a trail stewardship organization. We've been fighting for mountain bike access and trail advocacy and sustainable trail use for over 30 years now, since the 80s and 90s.
And you're making it happen.
And we're making it happen, yeah. We got a great crew.
Shemaine Mori-Holm leads the organization, which works to keep trails in the Angeles National Forest open for bikers, hikers, horseback riders, and runners, many of whom we pass on our way up to Lower Sunset Ridge.
Oh, this is it, huh?
All right, here's our site, yeah. We want to maintain where the cyclist is upper ridge here, where they roll out, but right here it's just super difficult.
We get to work reshaping the trail to make it more user-friendly and safe, and the results are outstanding.
Oh, okay. Okay, where's the new trail? Down below? Below road? Okay, very good. Thank you. Good job, guys.
Thanks for testing it out for us.
Yeah, thanks for testing.
Back in Costa Mesa, we're continuing our eco-friendly theme with a trip to the camp. You got that right. Entrepreneur and creator of the camp, Shaheen Sadeghi, curates retail stores and restaurants which all promote environmentalism and the local community.
Yeah, very important for us to stay away from chain stores. You know, we call it localization, personalization, customization, as opposed to homogenization.
That's the reason to travel to a place.
I think so.
Yeah, for sure.
I totally think so. Yeah, the first green retail center that I'm aware of in the country, and green wasn't even a vocabulary back then, so as far as we got was sustainability. And the idea was just, you know, celebrating the outdoors and nature.
Making for a great place to feel good about spending money to support the local community and small businesses. Something as a small businesswoman myself, I can wholeheartedly get behind. I'm picking up provisions at Old Sassoon Bakery, an Armenian bakery owned and run by Josep Garagosian.
How long have you had the bakery?
Since '86.
Okay.
Yeah, my parents started at Chico.
Yeah.
I'm picking up savory, affordable flatbread sandwiches and tasty pastries, and heading out for hiking adventures in the forest with LA Gateway District Ranger Jamal Butler.
The Angeles makes up about 72 to 73% of all the open space in LA County.
Wow.
We are literally the playground of LA County.
New York's got their Central Park and LA's got the Angeles.
For sure.
We're hiking Echo Mountain, touted by many as one of the top hikes in the USA. Its views of Los Angeles are stellar, and the history is just as remarkable. Back in the late 1800s, when the Mount Lowe Railway was conceived by Professor Thaddeus Lowe, it was an icon of its time as the only electric mountain railway in the USA. It took travelers to Echo Mountain Resort, known as the White City.
If you look out over to our right, you'll see the what we used to call the White City. There was also a railway that came up the hillside there that was at about a 60-degree incline. And it was really popular because you could see these resorts from down below. And so it almost looked like a castle in the sky, so to speak.
The resort was marketed as full service, a mile high in the sky, with a hotel, restaurant, tavern, observatory, and more.
Picnic area, dance hall, tennis courts.
Yeah.
Wow, they were living large up here at the resort.
So this was an attraction like Disneyland.
On the resort's old grounds, forest archaeologist Joanna Huckabee joins us for lunch.
That's good. So Joanna, what happened to this place?
So the Mount Lowe Railway opened on July 4th, 1893. Even though it became very popular and was one of the biggest tourist attractions in Southern California, after several fires, extreme weather, and also vehicle travel becoming increasingly popular, the railway was abandoned in 1937.
Now on the National Register of Historic Places, the remnants of Echo Mountain and historical photos and artifacts document a snapshot in time and Professor Lowe's dream. We're all eager to get back outdoors, and we want to do it right. Prepare for facilities to be closed. Pack your lunch and essential supplies like hand sanitizer and face coverings. Protect yourself and the places we love. We're starting our adventures on the water, taking a rafting trip with Steve Harris of Far Flung Adventures. Harris has been a river guide for more than 30 years and a staunch river advocate, making him a great person to help explore the Rio Chama. a tributary of the Rio Grande with approximately 25 miles protected as wild and scenic.
The Chama, well, you're seeing the beauty around you, and I think you're going to get the idea that it's well worthy of the protection of the Wild and Scenic Rivers Act.
The Chama was designated a wild and scenic river in 1988. In addition to trout and wildlife flourishing here, the canyons, with their varying elevations, are host to layers of rock with untold stories dating back millions of years, and scenery that has attracted humans for thousands of years, including in recent times with artist Georgia O'Keeffe.
She lived not far from here on Ghost Ranch, and if you're familiar with her landscape work at all, much of it is just a 100-mile radius here in New Mexico. So we say, we're in Georgia O'Keeffe country.
O'Keeffe would create works inspired by this dramatic scenery, including painting landscapes of the Chama River. And it's scenery like this that inspires travelers to venture out along the river on multi-day rafting and kayaking trips. Scenery and a little adventure.
Okay, hang on, we're coming up on our first little rapid here of the day.
On our day-long adventure on the Chama, we'll be encountering small waves and easygoing rapids. One of the reasons why this river makes for a fun trip for all ages. Well, maybe not as easy for Steve, who must maneuver our raft around rocks. And while he makes it look simple, it's not.
See the beach on your left there? That is our lunch stop.
Oh, great. It's hard to beat this scenery for dining. Or if you're Steve, for your office view. Back on the water, I wish I had more time to explore the Rio Chama, especially as I hear Steve describe what he loves most about being out on the river.
You've come out here, what, at least 100 times?
At least.
What is your favorite part of being out here on the river?
I think it's stopping in the evening, making camp, building a campfire, camping, sleeping in the sound of the river. The thing about a raft is you can carry a tarp and a toilet and a tent and some steaks and beer, and thus you can go out and tour rivers in a pretty good style.
Nature's playground out here.
Mm-hmm.
Less than 1/4 of 1% of our rivers are protected under the National Wild and Scenic Rivers System, making places like the Rio Chama rare and special.
It's a type of ecosystem that's, it's everywhere. You have rivers, and yet they're exploited to the point that few of them have a hint of the biological diversity or integrity or even the ability to perform their functions, like providing us with clean water and carrying sediment away. And the Wild and Scenic Rivers Act is the one shot that Congress has given us to protecting some of the best, least impacted rivers in the U.S. They're precious things.
We come up to my final set of rapids at Skull Bridge.
Continental Divide trail crossing of the Rio Chama.
And from here, I'll be meeting another expert, this time to hike. Lynn Bjorklund, the recreation and land specialist on the Santa Fe National Forest, is taking me on a portion of the CDT that's accessible from the road at Skull Bridge.
This is a really beautiful area. Most people see it by rafting down the Chama, but those who do the hike, they can traverse several vegetation zones and just beautiful scenery that's constantly changing. You start down here in desert zones, get up to some really higher elevations.
In North America, the Continental Divide follows the peaks of the Rocky Mountains through Montana, Idaho, Wyoming, Colorado, and New Mexico. We're venturing into the Gila wilderness with Jenny Gang, who walked the 3,000-mile-plus Continental Divide Trail just last year.
So this is the middle fork of the Gila River. This is not the official CDT, but it is an alternate that about 99% of hikers take, just because it's so unique on this trail. I think if you were to ask any CDT hiker what their top 5 sections of the trail are, they'd definitely name the Gila River alternate as one of them.
This trail is accessible from a parking lot for less serious hikers, and still includes some interesting challenges. like river crossings.
This will be my first time getting wet on this hike.
Don't worry, by 200, you'll be a total pro.
Okay.
All right, you ready?
Yeah.
The swift current and slippery rocks makes this a challenge.
Not going in on my first one.
Yay, you did it!
Maybe later today.
I'll have plenty of chances and lots of opportunities to see diverse wildflowers, rock formations, and beautiful nature.
New Mexico is a beautiful place to start the CDT. You know, unlike Colorado or Wyoming or Montana, it doesn't have the grand mountain vistas, but it has so many small, beautiful details.
Like all of these sunflowers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
As much as the terrain is beautiful, it's also rugged and unforgiving, making completing the route a challenge, even for the most seasoned hiker.
Jenny, what was it like to hike the trail solo as a woman?
You know, in the planning stages, it wasn't something that I thought too much about. I was more afraid of my own lack of experience than any external factors. Every day hiker that I met on the trail, every person that I met in town at a motel or a bar always asked me the same thing. You're doing this alone? Sometimes it was followed by, what does your boyfriend think? Or are you carrying a gun? And at first it was just kind of irritating, but it slowly dawned on me that the implication of that question is that they think I should have let the fact that I'm a woman be enough to keep me at home. They think it should have stopped me from having this adventure of a lifetime. And that made me both depressed and angry. You know, our best estimate is that maybe 20% of the people who attempt to hike the CDT are women.
Well, and obviously, Jenny, you did it and succeeded, and it is a sad story. It's a sad testament to how things still are, but hopefully your story will inspire others to get out there.
I hope so.
People hike, bike, horseback ride, and explore for different reasons. But for many, there's much to gain.
How do you feel like the CDT helped you?
I think the main thing that it gave me was confidence. After I completed that trail, more than half of it by myself, my life just changed. There's way fewer things now that I'm afraid of.
Since we're not far from Silver City, we head into town to get our reward for our day hike at a local brewery and restaurant known for its green chili cheeseburgers.
Trail rewards.
In addition to hiking, parts of the CDT are also popular for mountain biking. And at Silver City's local bike shop, travelers can rent bikes to take a ride. I'm riding with mountain biking enthusiast and co-owner of Gila Hike and Bike, Chris Schlabach.
Yeah, the section of the Continental Divide Trail here is pretty unique. It is accessible to a lot of different users, bikers, hikers, horseback riders. It's pretty cool.
Really close to town, too.
Yeah, you can, after a busy day at work, come out here, enjoy the outdoors, decompress.
Just a few miles outside of Silver City, the Little Walnut Trail is single track and offers markedly different scenery from our hiking adventure at Middle Fork.
Southwestern New Mexico is such a hidden gem. You can come out here, adventure, relax, and you have it all to yourself a lot of the time.
We all need our wild sometimes. We're not getting enough of it.
Absolutely.
And I've had just enough time on this trip to give me a better sense of why I love exploring outside so much, and why national scenic trails like the Continental Divide Trail are places to cherish. Because when we take the time to disconnect, we can connect in so many new ways. Lead by example and adventure only with your immediate household. Be prepared to cover your nose and mouth and give others space. If you're sick, stay home. Recreate responsibly. Our next adventure will lead us to an unusual spot amid the Little Missouri National Grassland, the largest grasslands in the United States and part of the Dakota prairie grasslands. I'm taking a hike with Treva Slaughter on the Ice Caves Trail, and though it's summer, we will be seeing ice.
Here on the western side of the state, this part of the Dakota prairie grasslands runs through the badlands of North Dakota, and it's a mixed grass prairie, so you have tall and short native grasses.
I'm seeing cacti and all these little flowers and things I wouldn't have seen unless I had walked through here.
Yeah, I always look at the prairie as a treasure hunt. If you're willing to look closely, you'll see some pretty amazing diversity in plant life and animals.
The Ice Cave Trail runs through the Little Missouri National Grassland and connects with the Monongahela Trail, mixing colorful grasslands and badlands.
One of the things about walking out here that I love is just how broad the sky is. You have these wide views of prairie, and I sometimes get lost to time because I'm always wondering what I'm going to see around the next corner.
With over 1 million acres, the Little Missouri National Grassland surrounds the Theodore Roosevelt National Park, creating a wonderland for outdoor lovers.
Wow, Treva, it's so dramatic here and so different than what we saw earlier.
Oh yes, the landscape, it's amazing how much it changes in just a span of 40 minutes or so. Here we're at the top of the ice caves, and the ice caves trail is just over to our left.
Way down there.
This is the heart of the Badlands. It's breathtaking, isn't it?
It really is.
And the views just keep on coming.
Wow, this is gorgeous.
You're at the top of the prairie and it's just laid out before you to enjoy.
We hike down to reach the ice caves. I've been inside caves before, but never an ice cave.
They're down in here?
They are. You'll have to duck pretty low to get in.
Oh my goodness. I'm trusting you on this one, Treva.
These North Dakota caves can contain ice through mid-July.
Whoa. See all the little ice crystals.
We're here in June, and it's been hot on the trails, so this cave's natural coolness is a great respite.
The cool temperatures and the snow from outside blowing in, the sandstone absorbs some of that moisture, and then it freezes to the rock. And then over the summer, as it warms up, it slowly melts.
It's pretty wild.
It is pretty neat, isn't it?
Wild to be in an ice cave in North Dakota.
In North Dakota.
Wouldn't have called that one.
Back on the trails, we hit one more scenic area, and this one looks straight out of a movie.
It's this view, whenever you're out hiking, that keeps you going, because you just want to see what you're going to discover next.
Guess you never know in these parts.
I'm ending my visit to North Dakota in a place that's familiar to me, on the back of a horse. I'm meeting back up with Jessie Veeder at her family ranch. A popular singer-songwriter, Jessie grew up riding horses and writing poetry and songs here, later touring the country and recording her North Dakota folk-style music in Nashville. I'm curious to learn more about how her family's ranching past in North Dakota has inspired her life and music.
This is the homestead place, and I grew up riding here, and so did my dad. His dad did as well. So there's a lot of generations of family on horseback.
Well, I'm excited to have you show me the lay of the land then.
Yes, I'm
excited. The lay of the ranch.
The lay of the ranch.
There's nothing better than exploring with a local, and in this part of North Dakota, Jessie's family has deep roots.
So I think there's something about North Dakota that just gets in people's blood. People that have spent a few years here and have moved away for 20 plus years, they come back and they say North Dakota is their home.
The Badlands gets in your blood, it sounds like.
It does, it gets in your blood, and I think a lot of people agree.
I asked Jessie to play one of my favorite songs of hers, Horses and Home. Inspired by a long ride on a horse named Rocky, the horse I rode today at her family farm.
It's letting it go, then holding on tight. It's what's left to lose at the end of a fight. It's saying a prayer before hitting the ground. To be gone, it's where you can be found, and that's how it goes, and that's how it goes with horses.
I'm staying at one of Watford City's family-owned hotels with Roosevelt links. The Roosevelt Inn and Suites houses one of the largest collections of Teddy Roosevelt memorabilia in the state and is my first dive into lots of area Roosevelt history. We're starting our adventures just outside of town in the Little Missouri National Grassland on the Monongahela Trail. Called the longest and most grueling single-track mountain biking route in the United States, the Monongahela Trail is over 130 miles of badlands beauty. While many people also hike and horseback ride this trail, which passes through Forest Service, state, private, and national parkland, serious mountain bikers relish the chance to take on this trail through regular rides or through special races organized by local trail icon Nick Ybarra. I'm riding out with Nick from the CCC campground through a portion of the trail that winds through the Little Missouri National Grassland.
The Monongahela is a Native American term that means something that has been and will be around for a long time. And the entire 144-mile trail is marked with these 4x6 wooden posts.
Little turtles on them.
With the turtles on them.
For the Lakota Sioux, the turtle embodies patience, determination, loyalty, steadfastness, long life, and fortitude, traits you need when taking on this trail. The turtle shell signifies protection. This land is significant to Native American tribes, who used the trail as a trading and hunting network in ancient times.
The Badlands have an opposite and equal descent for every climb. So if you're climbing, you know there's a downhill coming soon, and if you're going downhill, you know there's an uphill coming soon.
So challenges and rewards out here.
Absolutely.
Nick knows a lot about the trail's challenges. He's been instrumental in the trail's upkeep and survival. Moving from Bismarck to Watford City during the oil boom in the 1980s, Nick began riding the trail in his teens and got hooked on its rugged splendor.
It is so remote. You can ride out here an entire summer every week and not see another person.
The solitude of the trail is attractive to many, including Nick, who has spent countless hours since 2011 literally mowing the trail with a lawnmower to keep the ever-growing prairie grasses from threatening the single track.
Nick, you actually come out here and mow this trail?
I have mowed every inch of this trail. Sometimes it's over 100 degrees in the summer, and when I ride the trail in the wintertime, it can be below 30 degrees.
Wow, so I guess you gotta be a little hardcore to come out and do this trail.
Yeah, North Dakotans are hardy people, and the Monongahela Trail represents that well.
If you've noticed, we've been doing quite a lot of climbing so far in our ride, and I'm patiently awaiting my downhill reward, which turns out to be quite something.
And look at this, wow.
The Little Missouri River, the Theodore Roosevelt National Park North Unit, and then, of course, just the beautiful Badland Buttes. My biggest fear of moving out here was thinking that the magic of the view of the Badlands might eventually wear off. And after a decade of being here, views like this still are the same. They never get old.
I'm meeting scholar and historian Clay Jenkinson at the nearby Burnt Hills Trail, a certified Lewis and Clark historic site, and a spot where Lewis ran into some troubles shortly after leaving Fort Mandan in the early 1800s.
Lewis was accidentally shot by one of his men in the buttocks at a place called the Burnt Hills, and so we are almost precisely on the site of this unfortunate accident. It didn't kill Lewis, but it could have, and it debilitated him for the rest of the journey.
So did that sour his view of North Dakota?
No, it soured his view of Pierre Cruzat.
Mistakenly shot by Cruzat, one of his own men, who Lewis would forgive, it would be just one of the challenges of traveling through North Dakota.
What were their overall impressions of North Dakota, and how was their time here different from other states?
First of all, treelessness, but they had their most successful encounters with native peoples here. When they made sort of a mental list of the Indians they liked and those that they liked less, the Mandan and the Nez Perce were always at the top.
The U.S. Corps of Discovery, better known as the Lewis and Clark Expedition, spent 214 days in North Dakota on 2 separate trips, more time than in any other state. Often when I visit historic sites, I like to imagine what these earlier explorers would have seen.
Looking out today, we're seeing grassland. We're seeing a lake that wasn't here before. How has the landscape changed from what it looked like when Lewis and Clark traveled through?
Well, you see no buffalo, no grizzly bears, no wolves. The glory of North Dakota today is a kind of peacefulness in the landscape, and then just endlessness, endless prairie, the savanna of America.
A savanna that's more diverse than I would have originally imagined. The COVID-19 pandemic has impacted nearly every aspect of our lives and caused a great deal of uncertainty, including around playing outdoors. Stay close to home. Most places are only open for day use, so keep that in mind when planning your outdoor adventures. So somebody wanted to make an appearance tonight. That's my little calico cat, BB. She's actually a rescue from the Monongahela National Forest, which is one of our national forests coming up. Before it, we're going to the Finger Lakes National Forest in New York, and then we're going back to Wyoming and California. Thanks so much for joining us. We're having a great time. Stay tuned for more. We're enjoying nature adventures in West Virginia and New York State, visiting national forests where history and ecology take center stage. From suffragettes to historic train towns to great spots for fly fishing, we're playing outdoors with locals as the guides and inviting you along for the journey. We're starting in the Finger Lakes National Forest, located between Seneca Lake and Cayuga Lake in the Finger Lakes region. The only national forest in New York State draws in hikers, riders, history buffs, and travelers who combine wine tasting at nearby vineyards with exploration. Quinn Wright, who has hiked the entire Finger Lakes National Trail and now serves as executive director for the Finger Lakes Trail Conference, is taking me on a hike.
Glad we have a good leader today.
The longest continuous footpath in New York State, the Finger Lakes Trail connects to other large trail networks, including the North Country National Scenic Trail and the Long Path, allowing outdoor enthusiasts to hike from the New York-Pennsylvania border to the Catskill Forest Preserve in eastern New York and beyond.
Our system is over 1,000 miles in length. The Interlochen Trail, which goes through the Finger Lakes National Forest, is one of our branch trails.
Trails wind through woodland, meadows, rolling hills, and through private and public lands.
Quinn, what do you like about the trails that run through the forest?
Well, first and foremost is the solitude. Then it's the majesty of the trees. It gets me away from the humdrum of living in a city. And it's, to me, it's the most peaceful time of my life is when I'm hiking on the trails.
Those who elect to hike the entirety of the trail should budget about 6 to 7 weeks. But for those who just want to enjoy a portion, the Finger Lakes National Forest boasts a beautiful section to explore but for an hour or even a day. Other places to hike in the forest tell tales of Finger Lakes and U.S. history. The Finger Lakes region was a hotbed for activity during the women's suffrage movement, and we're learning about one important site for activity with Ranger Jody Vansilo.
So this is Kaywood Point, and to our left is what we call the Queen's Castle or Camp Fossenview. This was an area that back in the 1870s, women would come down specifically here to recreate and do things that women at the time shouldn't do. They would swim, they would play like badminton and racquetball, sports like that. And the big thing that they also did is they talked about the right to vote. So for the suffragette movement was going on at the time. So they wanted to come out here, and it was a safe place for them to talk about that, talk politics.
This was like their secret club to get things done. This is where they got things done.
It was. And there was notables that came down here. Elizabeth Cady Stanton was a very close friend and cousin to one of the owners, Elizabeth Smith Miller, and they built this for her on her 77th birthday. So 7 was instrumental for them, meant a lot. Fossenview is actually an anagram for 7 of us. So you'll see 7 sides. 7's represented all over the place in this Queen's Castle. In addition, Elizabeth Smith Miller was the queen of the castle. So that's why we also call it the Queen's Castle.
Fossenview would serve as a retreat from 1875 to the early 1900s, a time when many women activists throughout the Finger Lakes region were speaking out for equal rights.
A lot of really important women came through here and changed history.
They did. So we're pretty proud of the fact that we have this on this national forest, and it is a historic landmark, and love people to come down and see it. You know, when we say we have a castle, they think it's a stone castle, but when you get into really what this place means and what it meant, if for a little tiny part for the suffragette movement, it's pretty huge.
That's how it always happens. Group of women get together, change happens.
Exactly.
We know that.
Exactly.
The lands where the Finger Lakes National Forest rests today were inhabited by Native Americans for more than 10,000 years. Archaeological sites today abound in the forest, and there are also living reminders of the past in the form of apple trees, which visitors are free to pick and eat while visiting the forest.
So the fall is a great time of year on the forest. One of the best things is finding old apple trees. They were planted back in the 30s and 40s, so they're the heritage breeds that are disease resistant, taste incredible, easy to find, and whenever you come across an apple tree, you can guarantee there's a heritage site right next to it. So
there's a good one right here, Jody.
I think you should go for it.
I'm going to.
So how do you like it?
Ooh, that's good.
Isn't it good?
Tasty apples.
Yeah. And the funny part is, we have some visitors over here, is that the apples will drop onto the ground, they'll ferment a little bit, the cows will come in and eat them, and then we end up with drunk cows.
Well, I'm not giving them this apple.
No, you keep that one. That's too good to give up.
Trails in the National Forest often reveal more than meets the eye. To take a deeper dive into the forest's history, I'm taking a walk with Luann Wurst, a professor of archaeology who has been working on excavations within the forest, and is taking me to a site that used to be a farm owned in the 19th and 20th centuries by the Dunham family.
And this is the Finger Lakes Trail that comes off of Burnt Hill Road. It is one of the trails that goes right past some of the original farmsteads that used to be here. The forest itself was created as the Resettlement Administration purchased individual farms during the New Deal. And this sign is a historic sign that kind of talks about some of the rationale for that. Desperate farmers hanging on, unable to make a living in these upland farms. And what we've been doing since 2000 is excavating a series of these farms to look at these farmers' everyday life. And originally, we didn't really question that idea that the government was rescuing these farmers on impossible lands and resettling them. But it didn't take long before the kind of evidence we were finding was suggesting that the story was a lot more complex than that. We didn't find any evidence that these farmers were impoverished, that they were any different than any other farmers in the area. And it's turned into a story about transformations of industrial agriculture and government land planning and some of the implications of that.
You're debunking the history then.
In a nutshell.
Wurst has had her work cut out for her with the excavations.
We've collected about 250,000 artifacts.
Wow, that's a lot.
Yes, it is.
As Wurst continues to search for clues to fill in gaps in the narrative, travelers who hike the trails may want to keep their eyes peeled to learn more about the history. Next, we're saddling up with D&K Ranch. Owner Kelly Terry works to rescue and rehabilitate horses at this small ranch which welcomes travelers for trail rides in the Finger Lakes National Forest.
Most of our horses have come from different backgrounds. We'll get calls of horses that have aggression issues. Some horses we have are not rideable at all when we get them, and so we work with them.
Tell me a little bit about Whiskey.
Whiskey came to me the beginning of the summer because he didn't like anybody else but his owner getting on him. Anytime somebody else got on Whiskey, he'd put his head down, pout, and refuse to move. So Whiskey's wonderful. Now that he's been here this summer, he's met new people, socialized with different horses. He's a very personable horse, so I think you'll like him.
We saddle up and head out.
So this is Horton Pasture. It's beautiful pasture, one of my favorite trails. It's a great day at the office to be at Horton Pasture.
This is beautiful.
Views sweep down to Seneca Lake and a pretty meadow where goldenrod and colorful flowers abound.
This is one of my favorite times of the year to ride here because you can see the trees are just starting to turn.
This is an idyllic trail, and the horses seem to like it too.
Before it was the Finger Lakes National Forest, the land we're riding was inhabited by farmers and used by loggers.
When we come to the end of this road, you'll see there's a dip, and there was an old sawmill in there in the 1800s. There used to be schoolhouses every 3 miles, sawmill every 3 miles. Every square mile were roads back in the 1800s here.
Even earlier, the Iroquois Indians hunted here. In the 1950s, it was turned over to the U.S. Forest Service and established as a national forest in 1983.
We love it here because you can do so many different trails. There's trails that have deep gorges that you can go in, beautiful scenic areas, trails that are flat up high on the top of the ridge like this.
We ride up to a spot with a clearing in a meadow.
You can see on a clear day the end of the lake.
It's beautiful to be out here, to be on horseback, ride through a meadow, take a look at the lake, the changing leaves. Can't get much better than that.
I know.
Our next nature adventures take us to a national forest in West Virginia, where history and ecology combine with scenic drives, fishing, and hikes in the mountains. We're heading into the Monongahela National Forest, starting on the Highland Scenic Highway, a national scenic byway with a variety of scenic overlooks. Make sure to make a stop at Falls of Hills Creek and take the short walk down to see and hear beautiful waterfalls. And Cranberry Glades, where Rosanna Springston takes me on an eco walk.
We're now entering the Cranberry Glades boardwalk entrance. It protects 750 acres. It's very similar to that of Arctic tundra. It's a high mountain sphagnum bog, which is very unusual. It's the largest in West Virginia, and we are also the southernmost point for several plants and bird species. And then we have cranberries, which most people don't think of in West Virginia.
No, I think of them on my Thanksgiving table.
Most people do.
Boardwalks snake through the boglands, allowing travelers to walk through without disrupting the environment.
Now that we're out here more in an open area, you can kind of see the whole range of mountains that circle us that kind of help make a bowl shape that helps all the water accumulate in the glades that has muck and dead sphagnum moss and peat. And even though there's not a lot of water that you can see, each sphagnum plant holds 20 times its own dry weight of water. So while it looks dry, you can walk out there and you can sink.
So these are all plants that really thrive on these wet conditions.
Yes.
Interesting plants, birds, and other creatures, including beautiful flowers.
What most people are interested in is the orchids. There are several different species. One of them you can see here hid under the fern is the purple fringed that's just starting.
Oh, beautiful. Rosanna, this is the kind of place where you really want to take your time because everywhere I'm looking, I'm seeing something different.
Right, there's things hid everywhere, and one of those is the cranberry, which Cranberry Glades is named for, and that's right here. It's a very small little plant. Here is the vine, and there is the bloom.
Tiny little pretty flower.
And they're actually hid all over through here. You just can't see them for all the other vegetation. And then in late September, this whole area, the cranberries start turning red on their vines, so it gets a maroonish color to it.
Another area with a rare ecosystem is at Godnear Knob, where virgin red spruce trees show what woodlands would have looked like in West Virginia prior to timber companies clear-cutting so much of the land in the late 19th and early 20th centuries. Thomas Minnie of the Nature Conservancy takes me on a walk to take a look.
How much of this area is still covered in the old growth red spruce?
So here on Cheat Mountain in the Godnear Scenic Area old growth stands, there's only about 200 acres that's left. And interestingly enough, it's left because of a survey error. The whole mountain was cut, but this was left because they made a mistake in doing the survey.
So that's so interesting that now we have this rare place because of a human error. How nice.
That's right.
Is this an area then that they're conducting studies in to learn more about the environment?
Of course, yes. Here all across Cheat Mountain in this area, particularly this site because it's an old growth reference site, there have been ongoing studies for decades looking at the tree composition, looking at the types of plants and animals that are here, really looking at how the forest grows and what the processes that it has. So it's a really important area for study.
The Godnear Scenic Area is designated as a National Natural Landmark and is home for rare species, like the Cheat Mountain salamander and flying squirrel.
So as you come up in this spot here, you can really see what old growth in this part of the world looks like. During the last ice age, the red spruce forests were pushed out of Canada, into Maine, down through West Virginia, and all the way down to Alabama. So these northern Canadian type tree species went all the way south. And as the glaciers retreated, they found that they could still hang out here in West Virginia, because here we are on Cheat Mountain, there's a big island of land up over 4,000 feet, and a lot of land over 3,600 feet. So the right conditions, it's drippy here today, right? So we have a lot of rain, and it's cool, and this is the perfect environment for the spruce trees. In the wintertime, there's huge amounts of snow up here, so you get this really cool forest type where you've got these Canadian and northern species where you'd usually find them interspersed with these southern Appalachian species. And that's another reason that Cheat Mountain and the Monongahela National Forest is such a special place. And some of these trees here in this stand at the Godneer Scenic Area are up to 300 years old. So we know that through the testing that's done that some of these are very old trees. So
old trees with lots of good stories, I bet.
I bet they have a lot of stories to tell, yeah.
Next, I'm going fishing at Seneca Rocks with Dustin Witcherman from Trout Unlimited.
So now we're headed over to Seneca Creek, where it meets the North Fork of the South Branch of the Potomac, which actually drains all the way down into Washington, D.C.
My home area.
Yeah.
Getting out to our fishing spot is a bit of a challenge.
So I've been in this field for over 10 years, and my mom still reminds me every day that the rocks in the river are slick. So if you leave this section and you travel up into the forest where there isn't as much human activity, it's a lot less slick there.
Okay.
The human activity down here creates algae and sediment in this system that makes the rocks more slippery.
And what is it? What human activity creates that?
Agriculture, as well as development, which is kind of warming up the system as they create roads.
Oh, that's interesting. Okay.
Yep.
Cold water habitats for brook trout have been declining across the United States. Dustin works on restoration projects to help rehabilitate affected rivers and streams.
You see the white bubbles over there?
Mm-hmm.
So that's where we want to try to cast. We actually call those happy bubbles because it makes you happy when you cast in the middle of them and catch a fish. And then we also have the log that runs across the other side over there. And the brook trout like to hide underneath of those logs. So if you can make it within the happy bubbles and against that log, it's likely we'll catch a fish over there.
So how long normally are you out here when you come out by yourself before you might catch something?
About 10 to 15 minutes.
It might take me a little longer.
Nice.
Right into the bubbles.
Yeah. Each stream that's located within the Monongahela National Forest has trout in it, or native brook trout in many cases. So it's just a favorable climate for them. They need good, cold, clean water to live in.
So the fish are all out here. We just have to find them.
That's right. That's right. The guide saying is, I can show you where the fish are. I just can't catch them for you.
Dustin knows a place that he thinks will be easier for me, novice at fly fishing, to catch something. And it's also an example of a lesser trod fishing location on the Monongahela.
I may not be a rich man and have a whole lot to offer in this world, but I can offer you a fishing trip. And a lot of times that comes with a smile.
Hey, the best things in life are experiences.
Yep.
It's true.
I
That's
agree.
what you remember.
I agree.
Yeah.
We move further into the forest to see what we can catch.
Oh, fish.
Got it.
Nice. Oh my. Oh my, Darley.
Awesome. Oh, cool.
We take him down to the net.
Something pretty interesting about the brook trout is they spawn in the fall and they get really vibrant colors. You see reds and oranges and yellows then, which actually mimic the leaf color, the foliage on our trees, which folks travel up to see as well.
This brook trout it's like we have a work of art here.
My grandfather taught me how to fish at a pretty young age. He always said if you can just get away from the road just a little bit, it's amazing what you can find out there.
I'm glad that we caught something, but this was just a fun trip in general. It's just fun to be outside.
Awesome.
See you later, little buddy. Thanks for stopping by.
We're ending our trip at the highest point in West Virginia. Historian Rob Wetzel is walking with me at Spruce Knob.
We're on the Whispering Spruce Trail, and this actually gives a great view of the mountains to the west of Spruce Knob. And this is what the early settlers would have seen when they arrived and they crossed over the Allegheny front, and they would have been looking out at this great expanse.
Wow.
And they realized they had a lot more mountains to go.
A lot more mountains. It really just they seem to roll on forever out here.
Endless mountains.
A fitting place to complete my adventures in the Monongahela and Finger Lakes National Forests.
We hope you've enjoyed these adventures exploring national forests in New York State and West Virginia. I'm Darley Newman, and thanks for watching.
We're all in this together. Be an active part of making the outdoors safe, inclusive, and welcoming for all identities and abilities. Build an outdoors for all. Once a mining boomtown, and prior to that a hunting ground for Native Americans, Encampment today is home to just around 450 people. Copper was found in the area in 1897, which brought an influx of people and new mining innovations. At the Grand Encampment Museum, you can get a sense of the area's interesting history, checking out the inventive tram used to carry copper from miles away in the mountains. The much talked about two-story outhouse. The top was used during winter months when the snow piled so high you needed a second floor to be able to reach the facilities. Christy Smith takes me on a tour of this locally loved historical archive. Christy, what was Encampment like at the turn of the century?
It was an exciting place to be. There was lots of miners moving in, people moving in to set up shops and stores and blacksmiths and the newspaper. So it was a very exciting time. There was anywhere between 3,000 and 5,000 people that moved in, which is very different than today where there's 450 people.
It's a small town here.
Yes, very small town. But this town built this museum. We're celebrating our 50th anniversary, so I think it's a testament that the people of this community are very proud of their history and their mining and logging and ranching heritage.
The museum also has a fire lookout tower, once located in the remote Medicine Bow National Forest.
Our fire tower is over 60 feet tall. It was located in the Snowy Range Mountains. So if you were a fire lookout, your job would be to be stationed in this fire tower and basically to look for fire. So if you can imagine being in the cab of this fire tower watching big storms roll in and there's lightning going everywhere and your job was to look for smoke.
If a fire lookout saw smoke, he or she would use their Osborne Fire Finder, a device to help obtain the location, often cross-referencing with other fire lookouts in the area and then calling it in. Some fire lookouts would reside in their tower for months at a time. It was an isolating but rewarding job.
So Darley, now that you know the job description of a fire lookout, do you think that you would want to be a fire lookout?
Maybe for a night or two, Christy, maybe, yeah.
Right. Well, there was lots of women fire lookouts, actually. Here's a picture of Roberta Eads, and she's at Spruce Mountain Lookout.
Lorraine Lindelay grabbed headlines as the first female fire lookout stationed at nearby Medicine Bow Peak, starting in 1921.
Their job retention for women was higher than men. We don't know if it was because of just the isolation, they could handle that better, or maybe they just really enjoyed, being out in the wilderness today.
So these were our historic women firefighters in a sense.
Yes, yeah.
During the 1940s, there were more than 4,000 fire lookouts in national forests across the nation. Today, there are a little over 800, with only a few hundred actively staffed. Technology has replaced the human lookout in many cases, but lots of fire lookouts have been restored and can be rented by travelers seeking to snag a bit of history and a sense of life off the grid, including nearby Spruce Mountain Fire Lookout in the Medicine Bow National Forest. We're exploring the forest on horseback, riding out from Medicine Bow Lodge, a family-owned dude ranch that's been welcoming guests since 1917. Travelers stay in historic cabins, eat tasty homemade meals in the main lodge, and enjoy hiking, riding horses, fishing, and relaxing amid pristine nature. Owner Tim Bishop is showing me around the ranch and national forest on horseback, starting in a meadow where wildflowers abound. Asters with their starry-shaped flower head, Indian paintbrush, Wyoming state flower, and vibrant lupine are just some of what's in bloom.
Here's some sage. Always smells so wonderful.
It smells so good.
It makes the whole air smell good.
It smells totally different than sage you would buy at the store prepackaged.
I wouldn't cook it. It's a little strong.
It smells great. With the scent of wild sage and wild flowers wafting through the air, our ride is starting out fantastically. And I'm a little jealous that Tim gets to ride here every day. Tim, what's your favorite part about riding here?
It's home. This ridge is my home. We'll ride all day long and never see anybody.
Yeah, there's plenty of room to ride. With over 1 million acres in southeastern Wyoming, the Medicine Bow was designated as a national forest in 1902. Named after the Native Americans who held powwows, performed healing rituals, and sourced rich mahogany wood for their bows in the forest. Today, its diverse terrain, including the dramatic peaks of the Snowy Range, attract those looking to take in scenery, driving the Snowy Range Scenic Byway, which we'll do later in the trip, or hitting secluded trails with folks like Tim Bishop.
Well, you can see it right over there. There's about 5 beaver lodges up and down this area.
Wildlife abounds too, and as we get deeper into the forest, I truly feel a world away from my busy city life back home.
It's neat that there are all these little private places within the Medicine Bow that you can just ride to.
It is cool. I mean, really cool. Look at this sky, look at these trees. I can do this day after day, different places. New trails, new places to look. You know, everybody ought to have a job like this.
After my inspiring ride with Medicine Bow Lodge, I'm checking out one of the most popular activities in the Medicine Bow National Forest, driving the Snowy Range Scenic Byway. To make sure I don't miss a thing, Ranger Aaron Voos is leading me on a tour. We're starting the 29-mile route along Highway 130 on the western boundary of the forest by the Medicine Bow Lodge and Brush Creek Information Center. It's stunning as we rise in elevation to Medicine Bow Peak and Lake Marie, our first stopping point.
Just at over 12,000 feet, this is the highest mountain in the Medicine Bow National Forest and on the Scenic Byway here, obviously. We see year-round use. When the Scenic Byway is open, a lot of people come up here to take pictures, take the hike up to the top of the peak. During the winter, the highway is actually a groomed snowmobile trail, and as we go along here, you'll be able to see tracks from skiers.
People ski here?
People do ski that, amazingly. So
that's extreme, pretty adventurous.
It is extreme and adventurous. We don't necessarily recommend it.
We drive onwards to another scenic overlook with stunning views of the Snowies, and where travelers are reminded that though these mountains are beautiful, they can also be treacherous.
One of the things people come here to look at, unfortunately, is a memorial plaque that's right up here in the parking lot for a United Airlines flight that back in the 50s crashed, killed everybody on board. They hit right into the peak. There's still some of the wreckage up on the mountain. They left it there on purpose, partially because they couldn't recover it.
Why were they trying to fly over the Snowy Range? Is that a normal route?
No, not a normal route at all. Definitely a good question. Nobody really knows. Hopefully nobody ever takes that path again in a storm. But yeah, that's a really good question. That's one that's lingering out there.
It's one of those airline mysteries.
Exactly, exactly.
It was United Airlines Flight 409, and at its time, it was the deadliest airline crash in the history of American commercial aviation. Another must stop is at Libby Flats.
All right, so this is the highest elevation on the Scenic Byway. It's 10,847 feet.
So this will challenge you if you run up here.
This will challenge you, or if you bike up here.
Oh wow, Aaron, this is beautiful.
Yeah, so this is the panoramic overlook here. You can pretty much see everywhere from up here. Over on this side, you can see down into Colorado, Rocky Mountain National Park, down that way. And then if you kind of look back this way, you can see Laramie.
It's neat to be up in places like this where it's undeveloped, and it really makes you value our lands.
We want our children, their children, to be able to come to these lands and see the same views that we see for future generations.
Just up from Solvang, we're heading into the Los Padres National Forest to hike Figueroa Mountain, where stunning oak and pine trees mix with red manzanita. And in the spring and early summer, the mountains come alight with the colors of wildflowers. Wildflower expert Helen Tarbett is taking me out to enjoy some of the area's natural beauty.
The Los Padres National Forest is very popular for its numerous recreational opportunities. Figueroa Mountain is part of the Los Padres National Forest, and it's very well known for its wildflowers. And it's also very popular because of the proximity from here to Solvang and to the other local communities.
So easy to just drive up, get out and hike.
That's exactly it.
And that's exactly what we're doing. Though we missed the spring peak wildflower season, Figueroa Mountain is still in bloom.
Figueroa Mountain is very well known for the wildflowers. Like for instance, this one is one of the late season ones. This is a type of penstemon known as the scarlet bugler.
So pretty. Buttercups dance in the breeze along with golden yarrow, and a ladybug takes a walk on a plant stem. It's the perfect place to slow down time for a bit and take a natural pause, something we all need to do more often.
Are there a lot of plants and flowers that people are still coming up and utilizing here?
Yes, as a matter of fact, there are. Sage is used by the Native Americans for ceremonial purposes.
Figueroa Mountain is considered sacred by the Chumash, a Native American people who historically inhabited the central and southern coastal regions of California, including the Channel Islands, which we visited earlier in our journey. It's something on my mind as I end my hike with Helen and take off on my own to enjoy hiking during golden hour, when the meadows are bathed in rays of light and the Los Padres National Forest truly shines. The Los Padres National Forest encompasses over 1.7 million acres, with trails winding from mountains to beaches. Chip Lauren is leading me out and up from the Cerro Alto campground.
So this trail starts off kind of in a lower elevation, right by the creek, ends up meandering through kind of a couple of different canyons, and then you can continue hiking all the way up to the actual peak.
Is this considered an easy or strenuous trail?
I think you can consider it a strenuous trail. There's some pretty steep inclines and it takes quite a lot to get up to where there's a good viewpoint.
So we're in for a good hike today.
Absolutely a good hike.
A great way to see this national forest is to hike amid the changing elevations at Cerro Alto, one of the highest points in San Luis Obispo County.
So Cerro Alto is part of the Santa Lucia Range, and what's interesting about the Santa Lucia Range is it runs through San Luis Obispo County all the way up through Monterey and includes the mountain range of Big Sur.
Making for a biologically diverse haven for wildlife and plant species, including wildflowers, which change with the elevations and seasons.
So now we're starting to get out of the shade and out of the cooler areas, a little bit more exposure. And with the exposure, it gets a little bit hotter, but definitely better views,
Oh my gosh, amazing.
And it all starts to add up as we take on steeper trails and switchbacks to reach our final view, the Pacific Ocean.
It's a little bit hazy. On the clear days, you can actually see the Sierra Nevadas.
This is beautiful. This whole hike has been beautiful, though. I mean, it looks very tropical to me, even though it's California, but it's tropical California.
Right, and you have to earn each view. You know, every corner that you made, you had to hike for quite a bit and had to pour out some sweat.
Definitely worth the climb. Are you guys still with us? Thanks so much for joining us.